humanity will learn to deal with the water when it has assumed in its life sacrifice, renunciation, and surrender. If it doesn't assume in its own life sacrifice, renunciation, and surrender, it'll never learn how to deal with water. Because in order to deal well with the water, we need to have a relationship with it, besides those we already have naturally. But as water among the kingdoms is one of the most sacrificed, one of those who renounces the most, the water renounces to the wonders it could do. It renounces these wonders to serve humankind, and it still struggles to survive as living water, as we'll see. Sacrifice, renunciation, and surrender are implicit, inherent in water's life. So we won't learn how to deal with it as long as we do not learn how to deal with these intentions and share these intentions with the water. There is a mystery in water that is not understood by earthly science, which is still very material. Earthly science cannot conceive water that is not physical, water that is not like the one we know that comes from the tap or which is in the seas. Earthly science cannot conceive that water is something that has a beginning, that springs, that is created, not on the earth, not on the planet. Water does not begin on the planet. It comes from the depth of the infinity. It comes from the beginning of all creation, of the whole creation. Creation would not be able to exist if it were not for the water. So water, in its primordial source, in its beginning, water, where it is born, it is not physical, it is not liquid, it is something, it is a fluid, it's a universal fluid, a cosmic fluid that the human mind cannot grasp or imagine. So there is a great mystery in the water, which is this mystery of how water springs and is born, because everything else was born after the water. And humankind cannot penetrate this and understand this mystery. So they cannot use the water correctly, because something that they ignore its origin, they cannot use it correctly, because humankind remains in a state of ignorance concerning the mysteries of the cosmos, which will be reestablished and healed and restored someday. When we waste water, when we poison it, or when we kill it with chemical products, we do not know what we are doing. We have no idea of what we are doing. And we have no idea of the karmic debts in which we are incurring with this way, this manner of treating the water. Because first we kill the water and then we use it. And this enters our karmic debt. See how complicated is human karma. One of the reasons for this karmic complication, one of the main reasons, is misunderstanding of humanity concerning water. One of the gravest karmas for humanity is the karma that derives from the ill use of the water. Those who can believe this, those who can conceive this, must change completely the way they treat the water, because the disrespect and indifference of humanity, of the techniques, is imprinted in the water we use. So through water come to us many impulses, come fundamental impulses, and the way the water is treated before it reaches us. So you see that this changes a little our relationship with it, or better, it prevents a correct relationship we might have with it. So we should have a deep work in our intention of using water, of being united to water in the best possible way, in the best possible way we can. Even then, we know that we would be in that. For example, do you perceive the renewal that the physical body undergoes when it takes a shower, and when after the shower, it receives a major change? So after a tiring day, the shower shows you one of the points that all of us can feel. So observing what happens with us during a shower or after a shower, a correct shower, you can evaluate how much we would be different if we knew how to use water in other situations, which would not include the shower. So see how we waste this opportunity, this grace, this chance that nature gives us for free. If we deepen this subject, we'll see that this renewing power of water can show us a little more. And this power, this renewing power of water, which we perceive relatively in a shower and after a shower, imagine the renewing power of water with its presence in the oceans, in the seas, and in rivers and lakes. And we see how we treat the seas, how we treat the oceans, how we treat the rivers and the lakes. To begin with, we would have to recognize that water is a vehicle for the conduction and storage of magnetic charges. So, the greatest part of the magnetic network of the Earth is found in the oceans. So we would have to treat the oceans with much more respect, because it represents the magnetic network, and this networking means the transmutation of all that humanity produces with its physical bodies, emotional and mental bodies. The transmutation of all this, the greatest transmuting element of this are the oceans. If it were not for the oceans, what humanity produces would make the earth and the air unbreathable. Maybe this is the reason why the oceans occupy the greatest part of the surface of the earth. 70% of the earth is occupied by the oceans. So, The water element is a symbol of this saving network. Do you perceive the water element is the symbol of this saving network? The creation counts on water so that we do not perish. Not only because we need water, but because the oceans transmute everything that is expelled by us and would begin to poison us. Water is a symbol of a saving network on the planet. Water has as its characteristic flexibility and adaptability. Water is very flexible. Water is flexible. It adapts to a glass, to a cup, to an ocean, to a river. Water is very adaptable, and it represents even in a glass, reduced into a glass, it represents what it is in reality, what it represents to us. So, we would have to prepare ourselves to use water correctly if we want to enter in more advanced stages in which we may undergo transmutations. So our relationship with water is not something hygienic only or just something ethical. Our relationship with water represents our entrance into a more advanced stage of our life on the earth. Our relationship with water, as the current one, will not permit us to enter a new stage of life, because this is basic, because water is a part of our organism. Here we can see, for example, the renewing power of water, the renewing power that it produces in us, and see how important it is and how it goes beyond the physical part. Besides what a shower permits us, because if we don't have a correct shower, I don't know how we would be. I don't know how gross we would be, how rude we would be. But besides this, water revitalizes our aura. It does not only cleanse our physical body, but it also revitalizes our aura. It revitalizes our etheric body and facilitates the relaxation of the etheric network. The etheric network of the physical body is very tense due to the circumstances in which we live, the big cities and the circumstances in which we live. Water revitalizes our etheric network and facilitates the relaxation of this network. And with this, water makes a subtle work that we don't even perceive, while it purifies and balances our etheric network from all the dirty residues that it brings. It also permits the circulation of creative energy. So water has a spiritual relationship with us. Water is doing a work of manifestation of our creative energy. It also comes from the use of water. So now we'll see what happens and what are the benefits that the water produces in three facts, which are common facts and that make us understand and perceive the contribution of the water for us. How we do enemas, how we do immersion baths, or how we take shower in current waters. From what happens in these three uses of water, you can see how fundamental water is in our lives. In the enemas, For example, besides the therapeutic effects that it brings, water facilitates the removal of residues of past experiences that impregnated to the body. They block the opening of new cycles for the body. So you see how an enema, if we had an education, a scientific education, all of us would make enemas regularly. We would organize ourselves to make enemas because all the residues of past experiences block us internally, and this physically is taken care of during an enema. And if we want, for example, if we have our program to begin a new cycle of life completely different, if we were a little wiser, we would begin by making enemas, because this would be the basic point, the main and physical point for then to take care of other kinds of transformation. Now let's see the immersion baths. The immersion baths act in deeper and subtler spheres. The immersion baths does not act only in the physical level, on the physical level. It radiates to subtler spheres of consciousness. So our consciousness, which is not physical, receives the effects of an immersion bath. So an immersion bath should not be made with these poisonous soaps, toxic soaps. A true immersion bath should be a cleansing of our subtle spheres, our spheres of the subtle physical level, and an etheric relaxation that is similar to dream, to sleep, would take place. So a well-proportioned immersion bath would represent something similar to sleep time. So you see how careless we are concerning all this. Now, water in current waters, showers or baths in current waters. These are so active that the water, being current, has more life and acts more subtly. So baths in current waters removes psychological resistances. You would save a lot of money from psychologists if you would take showers or better baths in current waters, because they remove the free development of the individuals. Aboriginal peoples and indigenous peoples, native people, used to take baths in current waters, and because they help us disidentify, loosen our identity with our attachments. Our detachment is produced. Our identification with the physical body is loosened. The current water produces this. So you become much more liberated from this weight of this physical body, because the current water makes you get rid and free yourselves from this. Besides all these basic issues, water, purity, transparency, and abundance they are present in water. Water is abundant. water has an abundance that does not permit it to lack. In the water, see how much we kill water because it's lacking in so many countries. So this transparency and this purity and this abundance is typical of water. And in creation, it has been created, it was created counting on this possibility of being abundant. We are the ones who restrain the abundance of water. We do not have a mental education and a carefulness to perceive these things, but calling our attention, we may suddenly correct some things so that our life may change a little. And even if it's a little change, it's enough because we are very ill-informed about all this. We know that healing really takes place through the attunement of the vibration of the bodies with life that inspires us. A relationship between the bodies and our anemic network, and the openness and the inspiration of the individual contribute for this to take place. So, in order to have inspiration without being dead before these things, we do not inspire the body to attune with our higher vibrations. So, water is so perceptive that it perceives your intention. Well, here we would have to make some remarks to help us change our relationship with water. It may seem that we'll talk about obvious things, but we need to recognize that we have to assume these obvious things, because if we don't assume these obvious things and fundamental things, we do not begin our work with water, our physical work that will have consequences in our inner work. You see that from the trees, liquid drips from the waters, from the trees, when they are hurt or they are burnt. The trees sometimes, the trees are so poorly treated that they drip water. Our sweat is also water or liquid. Our saliva, our urine, etc. These are secretions, but our bodies also have this. And we wouldn't have to compensate this. We would have to take care to live in balance so that everything that is our secretion do not leave us lacking the liquid element. If we had a correct behavior with the water, we would be able to extract from aromatic, fragrant flowers liquids, not concrete liquids, but essences that would be rejuvenating and correcting of some physical defects. But this is unknown because we would never think that something that we extract from the flowers could do this for us. But this lack of correct relationship with the water makes us ignore that the extract of fragrant flowers contributes to the rejuvenation, because this is part of that point of creation, according to spiritual science, according to which our body could last for 120 years. But having the food of this extract of fragrant flowers, but all this is a field of evolution that we ignore completely, and we remain in darkness more and more as time goes by. But we know that at a certain moment the planet will solve this, making a great transformation, and this transformation will be very opportune because it will be the revitalization of a whole planetary life. See, we have in the atmosphere the gaseous state of water. In the atmosphere we have the gaseous state, so much so that when we have a baptism, we use the physical water to do the baptism, but the priest who is baptizing, he knows how to connect the gaseous from space with that physical water. And this is the true meaning of baptism, because the first sense of baptism first makes this obstruction, cleansing in the being, and then the connection with higher levels. So the baptism would include all this, and not just sprinkling some water on the head of the person, which would be useless. So the water would be able to unblock the physical body to receive an energy from up high. This would depend on the capacity, the ability of the priest and the intention of who is being baptized. As for the distilled water, it would be a very good cleansing liquid for the eyes. We ignore that if we dripped distilled water in the eyes, we would have a great remedy for the eyes, and it's available in nature, so we wouldn't have to have a different kind of cleansing liquid for the eyes. Water is also influenced by the physical properties of the continents with which it's in contact. So the water of the seas in contact with the continents, it is transformed, it absorbs things from the continents, and so if we want to find waters from the seas in a more original state, we would have to go to a very deep sea, far from the earth, far from the continents. This would be a way of making certain treatments, not near the continents, because the water is interfered by what the continents radiate. Let's talk a little about what is called sleeping water. Water that has slept is the one that is left outdoors. You leave a basin with some water outside, and on the following day you will use as a medicine. The sleeping water heals many things that remedies cannot heal. But for all of this, we would need to have a union with the element. We would have to have a true union, a real union, not a hypocrite union. So you're feeling bad or something, you put water outside, outdoors, and you drink it in the morning. This is the best remedy, but it can only respond if it's placed there correctly, if it receives the message that you need from it. So if you karmically has the right for this, if you karmically do not become damaged by all this, because the waste of water, the dirt that is put on the water, it all prevents the good that may come from the sleeping water. We wouldn't have to have a re-education. We might try to choose sectors of our life, because everything at the same time wouldn't be able to work. But we would deepen certain things. In these monthly lectures, we have been talking about this, about different sectors. We usually have 1 month to take care of these sectors, 1 month for each sector. Ferruginous water that has iron has more iron than normal. You can find it in some springs. There are some mineral cities in high mineral waters. It's a remedy against enemy. Enemy you heal with ferruginous water, but you need a relationship, an inner relationship with all this. Otherwise, it all becomes closed to you. When water becomes stagnant, it dies. So, if we perceive that we can not let some water become stagnant, if it dies, it'll attract elementals that are not positive. Stagnant water does not produce positive elementals. It produces negative elementals. And the water that we call natural, it comes from the rains, comes from the night, the dew, and we would need a whole work of hours with this element in order for us to enjoy all this in the times of today. As for the oceanic water, we will have to go very much into the ocean to find an oceanic water that may not be influenced by the presence of the continents. The waters of the lakes and the water of the ponds are considered dormant waters. They are not dead, but they are dormant. They are dormant you can find certain, should try to find some kind of current in the waters of the lakes and ponds in order for it not to die. So as for the deep waters, they are considered beyond 200 meters deep. The water becomes different after 200 meters deep. And the presence of fermentation in the water is also interesting. The stagnant water attracts entities that are not desirable. And it's very different from the water in which you have a piece of cheese or a piece of cheese or a piece of meat compared to the piece of a petal of rose. Around the cheese and around the meat are the grossest elementals, and around the petal, a rose, it could be the most harmonious vibration. So your kitchen closet could represent this very disharmonious vibrations. So we might begin a process of purification and spiritualization of our lives. All this is included. Now, we have had at the beginning, in the beginning, we had currents of extraterrestrial beings that came to foster the life on the earth. So when we had Egypt, these brought from space, they brought the symbol of water and printed it in the consciousness of the people. But at those times, the governors used to work in the consciousness of the people. And those who came from space, these Egyptians of olden, they taught that water is the symbol of infinite space. This that comes from the tap is the symbol of infinite space. And see how we have reduced it. Water used to teach the Egyptians. The Egyptians used to teach that water is the first principle of things. The Bible also mentions this. The first principle of things is not material water, but as the principle of things, as the representative of infinity. It's not material water, it's the fluid, the potential fluid of water, symbolized in Egypt by something they used to call the not revealed God. They used to have a God among the gods that they had, among the hierarchies of God that they had a not revealed God. And water is so important that the representation of this non-revealed God was water, but not in the physical plane, but they had the capacity to deepen in these things. This is why in the jars, in the vases of water, they used to have a serpent protecting a vase of water, a jar. The Egyptians that came to teach us certain things, they used to say that the divine waters are the native places of the gods. That which we call the gods, which are the very evolved spirits, but beyond and above these very evolved gods, there is the whole creation. But these gods are born in the liquid environment of space. But it's impossible to imagine this, but it's good to imagine, because in a way we connect with this and we learn how to live. And the Egyptians also taught us we have to go to the Egyptians, because today we do not have anyone who teaches this to us. The Egyptians used to say that this God is indivisible, because this is why the water is the first principle that was not indivisible. It cannot be divided. The water corresponds to the divine waters in which the first gods were born. So water is a mystery. It's a mystery to our senses. No matter how much our senses want to penetrate this mystery, it's not possible. So we need to learn certain things to approach these realities, to open ourselves to more inner and internal vibrations, and to emerge from this density in which we live on the surface. So there are mysteries that are occult to our senses, and one of the occult mysteries is the water. See, the blessed water. Blessed water, all of you know blessed water is one of the oldest rituals practiced in Egypt. Egypt used to practice this ritual of blessed water from the beginning, the very beginning. This was also due to the Egyptians. The Egyptians discovered this and introduced this on this planet, the blessed water, which is also something that we use a little superficially without knowing what we are dealing with. This according, if it's blessed really, but we use it a little superficially and we would have to regenerate ourselves a little bit with some uses. Let's begin now to talk about the eternal snows and the glaciers, because something tells us that we would have to know a little bit about this. The eternal snows and the glaciers, what exists there is cosmic dust. If you are before a glacier, if you are before an eternal snow, you are before cosmic dust that connects us with the highest and farthest levels of the universe. So if you are before a glacier, so if you are before an eternal snow, you are in contact with the farthest levels of the universe. You have heard that the ascended masters have their homes in the tallest, highest points of the Himalayas, because there they have contact with the farthest points of the universe. So to drink water from the snow produces something very special. We have to be careful with this, because if we are not prepared, and if we are not educated, and if we are not controlled, this water of the glaciers, powerful as it is, will bring us an excessive growth of certain glands of our body. So we cannot sometimes use water of glaciers. Water from glaciers and from eternal snows, this would have to have a lot of care, because we might not be able to use it, because it might bring hypertrophy of certain glands and some diseases. Certain organisms of the waters cannot live in boiling water. So this is interesting, because we would need to know how to use boiling water. We light the fire, but certain organisms cannot live in boiled water. So, in order for you to drink the water that has been boiled, the microbes have already died, but it has absorbed from the atmosphere a great quantity of dead particles. So when you have boiled this water, this is not to drink. So if it has killed everything and you drink things that are dead, you drink things that are dead from the atmosphere that the boiled water has absorbed. So the boiling water that has
grande estagnação. Então, se você ferve a água, deixa esfriar, depois usa aquela água é estagnante. Aquela água deixa o cérebro estagnado.
So that water leaves the brain stagnant and sleeping. So the use of boiling water, the use of hot water must be very careful. If it has boiled too much, it is dead water, and it begins to absorb dead things from space that were dead for a longer time. So this is what we drink. So we have to be careful. So pure water, which is not boiled, which is not touched, pure water is a great medicine. If we had the possibility of having pure water, not chlorinated, the pure water can cure any healing, can cure any bruise or any wound. If you have a wound and you have pure water from a spring, try the water because it may heal, and the healing emerges from the body that is receiving that in contact with this water that is alive. The use of boiled water only if it's recent and very hot, but be very careful. Here, so many pieces of knowledge of boiling, so it's enough for us to give these signs in order for people to renew their life procedures. So to begin with renewing our lives, we must begin with fundamental things, very basic things. Things have reached such a point that after the change of the inclination of the earthly, of terrestrial pole axis, a new kind of water will arise on the planet. When the transition happens, the use of water as it is done today will not take place anymore. A new kind of life, a new kind of water will arise. It's in the universe, the possibility of doing this. And one of the mysteries of the water is this: how water will be after the transition. This is one of the most important mysteries of water. It's a mystery for us, not for the planetary centers, because the Aurora Center, for example, it is equipped with all the understanding concerning what will be the Earth after the transition, and to the planetary center of Aurora will be given the responsibility of controlling and fostering the change in the water for the whole planet. The Aurora Center will be in charge of the transformation of water. It'll give the impulse for the new water to arise. This is very good for us to know, because we would have to perfect our relationship with the planetary centers. And concerning the water, the planetary center of Aurora is very important for this. The Devic kingdom is very responsible for the manifestation of these channels. Everything that happens with the water, the Devic kingdom is very responsible for these transformations. And we would like to transmit a little prayer. And
deixar esse assunto assim, aberto dessa forma.
We couldn't leave this subject open like this.
Devido a respeito a
We would have to have a prayer.
água,
Water,
fluido universal,
universal fluid
dom da
of
manifestação,
manifestation of water.
fluido,
Universal fluid
dom da
gift
manifestação,
of manifestation.
divina providência,
Divine providence,
lei absoluta,
absolute law in the universe.
quanta coisa está
See how much is inside these sentences.
Vou repetir.
I will repeat. Water,
Fluido universal,
universal fluid
da manifestação,
gift of manifestation.
divina providência,
Divine providence,
absoluta,
absolute law in the universe.
sido pelo reino de
This is known by the Devic kingdom. They continue.
Ama teus filhos,
Call your children
revelar-lhes
in order to reveal to them divine love. Relate this with water. Call your children to reveal to them divine love. Water, revealing divine love.
amor crístico,
Christic love that alleviates suffering and brings balance to the four elements.
amor crístico,
Christic love
guia o
that alleviates suffering
e traz
and brings balance to the four elements.
como importante, hein?
How important it is.
E o Deva cita
And the Devas mentions the waterfalls, the Iguaçu waterfalls. And the Deva continues.
força,
Strength,
beleza
beauty,
e ternura
and tenderness
expressos pela mãe
expressed by Mother Nature through her love.
a água como integrante
Water, as a member of the mineral kingdom, has the function of synthesizing all the experiences developed by all the other states of consciousness.
a água sintetiza
Water synthesizes all experience that has taken place on the earth. Water, as a member of the mineral kingdom, has the function of synthesizing all the experiences developed by all the other states of consciousness expressed by this kingdom in manifestation. Well, we would have to interiorize a little and to seek something inside us that could welcome all these things.
e esses devas
And these divas
pronunciaram mais uma frase
pronounced another sentence that is very good for us to receive. They say, water
grande banco
is a great database
em constante
in constant renewal.
a água
Water is a bank database that is always being renewed, always living.
isso significa
And this means
todas as experiências
that all the experiences developed on this planet, laboratory planet, are incorporated in the water element. All the experiences that the planet lived are embodied in the earth because the mineral elements are in all. They have omnipresence as a fundamental aspect of its manifestation. So before the water, we are before a real sanctuary. So I hope I have collaborated for us to see this liquid not only as a liquid but also as a universal fluid. And thus we will be able to treat them with more respect, with more gratitude, and maybe eliminate from our attitude our indifference when we have a contact with it. Because indifference is something that is typical of human beings, and before water, this is a very serious fault concerning the whole manifestation. Thank you all for the attention.